Hi, this is Hesper Hyman, and this is my Module 3 special education interviews for EDL853. So my first question is, what does your child find procedures? The principal brought up that he relies very heavily on the general education teachers. He said, they're the front lines. They're the ones that are in the trenches. They're the ones that are seeing the students on the day-to-day. They're the ones that will notice when there's changes or when there's some lagging that's starting to happen and can bring it to his attention. And then he also brought up active parents. So those parents that are noticing either behaviors at home that they're unsure of, that they have questions about, or they're maybe noticing grades that are slipping or things like that. After that, gathering documentation, sending that to our co-op, and having our SSA office start the testing process. The SPED teacher brought up something I hadn't really thought about, and that was advertising with posters. Hanging it up, just bring awareness to the community of maybe some different things that they need to be looking for in their home, maybe some different things that maybe we can service and help with. And then the paraprofessional also added in that it's very important for her to be working with the special ed teacher, that she's making sure that the special ed teacher is getting everything that she needs, and that she's there kind of to support her. What do you find to be the most challenging part? The principal and special ed teacher both said, changing laws and regulations. Laws and regulations can change so fast sometimes that you have to constantly be learning and keeping up with them to make sure that you are staying in compliance at all times. The principal then also did bring up one of the things that he finds most challenging is really stepping back and letting the special ed teacher take control. So really having all the faith that he has in the special ed teacher being able to do her job, and that she's doing it correctly. The special ed teacher brought up something that I've heard numerous special ed teachers say, and that is paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. She did say, if I have to do one form on something, I'm doing 5 forms on the same thing. And unfortunately, that is part of special ed. She also brought up something I hadn't really thought about too much, but just all the different curriculums that she's having to work with. So right now she's servicing 3 different students about 60% of the time in the resource room. With that being said, they're all on different levels. They're all requiring specialized curriculum. And so, just having that motion and that fluidity in her classroom is very important, and can be very challenging. The paraprofessional brought up something that I think general ed teachers also struggle with, and that's, how do you grade on non-traditional curriculum? How are we going to grade on effort, ability? How are we going to grade on something that just isn't straightforward? So the most rewarding part of your job, all 3 of them brought up that, it's when the students learn something, whether it is a academic goal or it is a personal goal. When they show growth of any kind, that just makes their job just that much better. The paraprofessional said, for her, when she's seen a student that she's working with that is struggling, and then that moment that they get it, she said, when she sees that smile and she sees that confidence in them, that's just the most rewarding part for her. The special ed teacher, for her, is a love for special needs students. Her mother actually has been a special ed teacher for 30 plus years and works with severely handicapped students. So she really grew up around special needs students, and she has a real passion for special ed and for special ed students. And so just being in that field to her is very rewarding. What advice do you have for supervision? All 3 of them listed communication. The principal said, you really have to trust the people that you put in that position, that they know that they're of what they're doing. And if you have any questions about it, make sure that you're asking. For the SPED teacher and the paraprofessional, they both said, for them with a supervisor, they want to know, what are your expectations of us? What are your expectations of the SPED department? Are we in the classroom? Are we servicing the students in general ed? What are the different things? And, the SPED teacher said, I want a supervisor to come to me and ask me questions if they're unsure about something I'm doing or if they don't understand something. And then the paraprofessional pointed out, for her personally, she likes to have goals in mind. Where do my students need to be versus where do I need to be? How do you work effectively with parents of special needs? All three of them listed listening and communicating. Um, you know, Parents of special needs children sometimes just need somebody to listen to them. Sometimes they just need to be heard. They need to be told, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. Let's see what we can do. They're coming to us with concerns. And with that, we need to be able to say, okay, this is what we can offer. This is what, we can do for your student. Let's get the process started. The principal said, for him, being transparent is extremely important. A parent comes in, they need to know the documentation is there, that the IEP and the 504s are being followed, and being very open with the parents. This is what we can offer. This is what we can do. This is where your student's going to be. The special ed teacher said that she is required by law to send out progress reports every 6 weeks on the goals. So she has a student that is low in one area, she will send out goals in that. But if they're low in multiple areas, then she's got goals for every single class. And then the paraprofessional brought up, include those parents as much as possible. A parent comes to them and says, hey, I noticed yesterday little Johnny was doing his math homework. He put his headphones on and he became really focused and he worked through his problems. He got them all right. Maybe that's something we need to try in the classroom. Be open to their suggestions. What advice do you have for first-time administrators? The principal said one of the things for him being a first-time administrator this year is, developing a good relationship with your special ed director. He said he calls the SSA office and the director probably about once a week with some question. Thankfully, she's very nice and answers them every time. Very important to be seen, to be out in not only the classroom, but in the community. And he said, cover your butt. He said, if there's something going on in the special ed department, you need to be aware of it. If there are changes that need to be made or something that needs to be done, he goes, you need to be double and triple checking that. Make sure you're following those rules and regulations. The SPED teacher says, it's very important that the administrators understands the expectations of special needs students. The next thing that the paraprofessional and the SPED teacher both said was be ready. That was one of the things that they would tell an administrator right away. Be prepared. You're going to be in having lots of emails, lots of phone calls, lots of meetings. Be patient, be flexible. Just know that you've got a lot of time that you're going to be spending to this. And the paraprofessional said what she has seen a lot is that special needs students sometimes need a little bit more one-on-one time with administrators. Sometimes to them, they're kind of like can be the big bad wolf. You don't want to go to the principal's office. That's where you get in trouble or something. They hear those things. So they need to have a one-on-one, idea with the principal that they, so they can get along, so they can understand them a little bit better. So how do you work with regular ed teachers? You put a bunch of regular ed teachers in a classroom, they're going to act just like students. Nobody's going to raise their hand and say they don't understand what's going on. So all of them said, really encourage teachers to ask questions. If you don't understand, make sure you are asking. And then he said for him, really checking up on documentation. One of the things that he did was he started student support teams this year that are in elementary, junior high, and high school. We meet once every 6 weeks. We go over our IEP and 504 documentation. We talk about what's working, what's not, and what do we need to change. And then he said, sometimes with my regular ed teachers, I've got to be supportive. They're not generally working with special needs students all the time. And so for them, for general ed teachers, sometimes they can get very overwhelmed with having a special needs student in their classroom. And sometimes they just need that extra support. The sped teacher brought up, really meeting with the general ed teacher over the student goals, and she said, Google Forms has become one of her lifesavers on that. Uh, the paraprofessional, she's kind of there to help with monitoring for tests and working on projects. I know this year I'm teaching home economics, and I have a special needs student that we are doing flour sack babies right now. He's not loving the project, but between the paraprofessional and I, we are getting him through the project, and he's learned to not hate it. I don't think it's ever going to be his favorite, though. How do you describe the role of special ed teachers and building principals working together? Scheduling became one of the biggest ones, that it's very important for the principal and the special ed teacher to work together on scheduling, to make sure that all of the IEPs are being met and that all of the special needs students are being serviced. And then the paraprofessional brought up, being fluid. She's been out the last 3 days with the flu. So somebody had to step in, whether it was an administrator or another aide, just kind of shuffling people around to make sure things are being taken care of. What characteristics do they look for in aspiring administrators? First of all, you've got to have a basic understanding of what special ed is. And all three of them are a willingness to get involved. You've got to continue your education. You can't just step back and come in and say, oh, I already know everything. You've got to understand that you're going to have to be flexible, you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to be changing a bunch of things. So when I reflect over this module, the big thing that I think about is that I don't know near as much about special education as I thought I might have, and there's still a lot that I need to learn. I was kind of surprised with some of the answers. Some of them I kind of knew, but looking at the SSA, I need to do more with them to understand their role. When I evaluate kind of all their responses, they all really had a lot of the same responses as far as keywords: communicate, listen, be flexible, be present. Those things are just really constant through everything that they said. And then when I look at where I want to be as an administrator moving forward, I need to understand that the one class I took as undergraduate, the couple of classes I might take as graduate are not going to be enough to keep me moving forward as an administrator. I'm going to have to keep up with my continuing education in special education. I'm going to have to make sure that I'm staying up with rules and regulations, that I'm asking those important questions, that I'm understanding the process more and more every day. And it's going to be ongoing. And I'm not going to understand or know it all, but I have to keep searching for it. And I need to use my resources, my special ed director, my paraprofessionals, my sped teachers, ask them questions, learn from their experiences. Thank you so much for watching my presentation, and thank you again.